Billionaire CEO yells at black lady for touching his Lamborghini. Moments later, she fixes the engine. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because stories like this one will move you, surprise you, and make you think about life differently. Glowing star. Now picture this. His voice thundered across the parking lot as if money gave him the right to crush her dignity. "Don't touch my car," the billionaire CEO barked, his eyes blazing at the black woman with grease-stained hands. But within minutes, when his prized Lamborghini sputtered and died, it was her touch, the very one he despised, that brought the beast back to life. The Miami sun shimmered like liquid gold over the polished rows of exotic cars parked outside the oceanfront Grand Hotel, where the city's elite had gathered for the annual Business and Innovation Gala. Harrison Cole, the billionaire CEO, arrives in his Lamborghini. Naomi Brooks notices the smoke. He humiliates her in front of the crowd. The car embarrasses him instead, and Naomi confidently challenges him to pop the hood. High voltage. If you were Naomi, disrespected by a powerful billionaire in front of a crowd, would you still help him fix his car, or would you walk away and let him suffer the embarrassment? Comment below. I'd love to know what you think. His voice thundered across the parking lot as if money gave him the right to crush her dignity. "Don't touch my car," the billionaire CEO barked, his eyes blazing at the black woman with grease-stained hands. But within minutes, when his prized Lamborghini sputtered and died, it was her touch, the very one he despised, that brought the beast back to life. The Miami sun shimmered like liquid gold over the polished rows of exotic cars parked outside the oceanfront Grand Hotel, where the city's elite had gathered for the annual Business and Innovation Gala. The event was a playground for billionaires, CEOs, and celebrities, each flaunting their wealth as much as their status. Among the lineup of gleaming machines, one vehicle drew more eyes than the others, a matte black Lamborghini Aventador, roaring with silent arrogance even when parked. The car's owner, Harrison Cole, had arrived minutes earlier. At 42, Harrison was the kind of man whose presence turned heads before his wealth even entered the equation. Tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably tailored in a charcoal suit, his white hair at the temples gave him a dignified edge rather than an aged one. Every inch of him screamed power, the kind of power that came from being the CEO of Cole Dynamics, a tech empire whose products shaped everyday lives. Harrison had built his fortune with ruthless determination. To him, respect wasn't given, it was commanded. And his car, his clothes, his very aura, were reminders that he belonged to a different world than the ordinary. That afternoon, however, ordinary had found its way to him. Standing a few feet from the Lamborghini was Naomi Brooks. She was in her early 30s, wearing worn jeans, steel toe boots, and a simple blue work shirt with a faded patch, Brooks Auto Repair. Her natural hair was tied back into a puff, streaked with oil from a long day in the shop. Sweat beaded her forehead in the Florida heat, but there was a quiet dignity in the way she carried herself. Naomi hadn't come for the gala. She wasn't here to rub shoulders with billionaires or pose for glossy magazine spreads. She was waiting for her younger brother Jordan, a valet at the hotel. She'd promised to bring him lunch on his break, a Tupperware of fried plantains and jerk chicken their grandmother had made. But when she saw the Lamborghini's hood slightly ajar and faint wisps of smoke curling from the grill, her instincts kicked in. Years of working under cars had trained her to spot trouble like a hawk spots prey. Naomi crouched slightly, eyes narrowing. "That's not right," she murmured. Without thinking, she reached out, resting her hand lightly on the car's sleek surface, as if listening through touch. The warmth of the engine radiated through her palm. She frowned, tilting her head. That was when she heard it. "Hey!" The voice was sharp enough to slice through the humid air. Naomi jerked back, her heart skipping. Harrison Cole strode toward her, his jaw tight, his hand adjusting the cufflinks on his sleeve as if even in anger he couldn't abandon composure. "Step away from the car," he barked, his voice carrying the weight of command. Conversations around them paused, curious eyes flicking toward the scene. Naomi blinked, momentarily stunned. "I wasn't." "Don't touch it," Harrison cut in, his blue-gray eyes narrowing with disdain. "Do you have any idea what this is? That car costs more than everything you'll ever own in your life. Back away." Gasps fluttered from onlookers. A few people chuckled under their breath, feeding off the spectacle. Naomi felt heat rise in her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from anger. She hadn't meant disrespect. She hadn't even planned to approach the car. She'd just seen smoke. And now this man, this stranger, was speaking to her like she was dirt under his shoe. Her lips parted, but before she could reply, a sputtering cough erupted from the Lamborghini. The sound was ugly, mechanical, a betrayal of the sleek beast's image. Then came a hiss, followed by a faint trail of smoke rising higher. The crowd's laughter died. Heads turned. Harrison froze, his glare flicking toward the hood. His pride, his precious machine, had dared embarrass him in front of an audience. He pulled at the door handle and slid inside, pressing the ignition. The car growled, then choked, rattling like an old clunker before going silent. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Harrison's jaw clenched. And Naomi, standing with arms crossed now, let out the faintest breath of disbelief. She shouldn't say anything. She should walk away. But her mechanic's instincts burned in her chest like a live wire. She shifted her weight. Looks like she's overheating. Harrison's head snapped toward her, his glare sharpening. Excuse me. Naomi gestured toward the hood. The Aventador's cooling system runs hot. If you've been pushing it in this heat, the engine can't keep stable temps. You've probably got air trapped in the coolant lines or a failing thermostat. The silence that followed was deafening. Somewhere in the back, someone stifled a laugh. A hotel guest whispered, "She's diagnosing a lumbo like it's a pickup truck." Harrison's chest tightened. How dare she? How dare this grease-stained stranger stand there, lecturing him about his car? He climbed out, smoothing his suit jacket. His voice was cold steel. "Lady," he said, stepping closer, "you don't know the first thing about a machine like this. So save me the—" The engine hissed again, louder this time, as if mocking him. Harrison froze, his jaw working. His eyes flicked toward the hood, then back to Naomi. Naomi arched a brow, her patience thinning. "Pop the hood," she said flatly. "What?" "Pop the hood. Unless you'd rather wait for it to blow out your head gasket." The audacity in her tone silenced even the murmuring crowd. Harrison's fists curled at his sides. No one spoke to him like that. Not board members. Not rivals. Not employees. Yet in that moment, with his Lamborghini coughing like an asthmatic smoker, Harrison realized he didn't have a choice. If you were Naomi, disrespected by a powerful billionaire in front of a crowd, would you still help him fix his car, or would you walk away and let him suffer the embarrassment? Comment below. I'd love to know what you think. The silence thickened around them, the kind that made every breath feel amplified. Even the ocean breeze that usually whispered along Miami's coastline seemed to hold itself back, waiting to see what would unfold. "Pop the hood," Naomi repeated, her voice steady, her arms folded across her chest. She wasn't asking. She wasn't begging. She was commanding a billionaire, and that in itself left the crowd buzzing. Harrison Cole's face darkened, his jaw ticking like a machine about to snap. He wasn't used to being told what to do, especially not by a stranger, and certainly not in front of an audience. His empire thrived on obedience. His employees jumped at his every word. Even the journalists who dared to challenge him often softened under his gaze. Yet here was this black woman in a grease-stained shirt, staring at him like he was just another man who didn't know what he was doing. And the worst part? She was right. The Aventador's hiss was unmistakable. Harrison knew something was wrong, but he had no idea what. Pride burned his throat as he glanced at the gawking faces around them. He could already imagine the headlines. Billionaire's Lamborghini breaks down at gala. Crowd watches in amusement. For a man who had built his reputation on control, this was unacceptable. Naomi lifted a brow, her expression calm but firm. "What's it gonna be? You can keep glaring at me, or you can let me save your $200,000 engine from frying." A ripple of laughter spread across the crowd. Someone whispered, "She's fearless." Another murmured, "Cole looks like he's about to explode." Harrison swallowed the heat in his throat, unclenching his fists. With a sharp motion, he pulled the lever and popped the hood. Naomi stepped forward, brushing past him without hesitation. The faint scent of oil and citrus soap clung to her as she leaned over the engine bay. Her practiced eyes scanned the components, her hands moving with the confidence of years spent in garages where respect wasn't handed to her but earned through grit and precision. She tapped a hose with the back of her knuckles. Thought so. Air pocket in the coolant system. See that condensation? She's been overheating for a while." Harrison bristled. Don't talk about her like she's some old pickup truck, he muttered, forgetting himself. Naomi shot him a sidelong glance. A machine's a machine, whether it's a Lumbo or a lawnmower. Treat it right, and it'll last. Ignore it, and it'll bite back. Doesn't matter how much it costs. Her words landed heavier than he wanted to admit. The crowd had grown larger, cell phones tilted upward, recording every second. Social media was already buzzing with hashtags. Harrison could practically hear the clicks and swipes. His carefully curated image was dissolving before his eyes. Naomi, on the other hand, didn't care. She focused on the engine like the crowd didn't exist. She asked for a rag, but when no one moved, she pulled one from her back pocket, already streaked with oil. Her fingers worked with sharp precision, loosening a clamp here, adjusting a hose there. She explained under her breath as she worked, not to Harrison, but to herself, the way mechanics often did. Coolant trapped, thermostat sticking, okay, easy fix. Easy if you know what you're looking for. Harrison hovered near her, torn between indignation and awe. Do you actually know what you're doing? He asked, his voice harsher than intended. Naomi straightened just enough to give him a look that could cut glass. If I didn't, your precious baby would already be on fire. So why don't you let me work and stop talking? The crowd erupted with chuckles, some bold enough to clap. Harrison's ears burned, but he said nothing. For once in his life, he had no clever retort. Naomi bent back into the engine bay, tightening a final clamp. All right, get in. Harrison blinked. Excuse me. Start her up. His lips parted to argue, but something in her gaze held him. It wasn't arrogance, it was certainty. Against his own instincts, he slid into the leather seat and pressed the ignition. The Lamborghini roared to life, smooth and powerful, the cough gone, the hiss silenced. It purred like a predator newly awakened, its engine restored. Gasps of awe swept through the crowd. A few people even clapped outright. Someone whistled. Naomi wiped her hands on her rag, stepping back with a nod. Told you. Harrison stared at her, speechless. For the first time in years, Harrison Cole, the man who always had the last word, had nothing to say. Do you think Harrison deserved to be humbled this way, or should Naomi have walked away instead of fixing his car after the way he treated her? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to see where you stand. The silence around the parking lot was so thick it seemed to muffle the ocean breeze drifting off Biscayne Bay. A moment ago, people had been laughing, chatting, sipping champagne on the hotel steps while admiring the wealth on display. Now all eyes were glued to one scene, a billionaire CEO glaring down at a black woman in oil-streaked jeans, and her, standing tall as if his money and reputation meant nothing. Naomi's words lingered like smoke in the air. Pop the hood. Harrison Cole's nostrils flared. His hands tightened at his sides. He wasn't used to commands. He gave them. In boardrooms, his voice ended debates. His signature closed deals. His empire wasn't just tech, it was power, prestige, dominance. And here he was, being challenged by someone who looked like she'd walked out of a mechanic's bay instead of a gala. Yet the Aventador's mocking hiss had betrayed him. The car wasn't just an accessory, it was a symbol. Symbols couldn't fail. Not in front of investors, journalists, and Miami's high society. Naomi didn't flinch under his glare. If you'd rather stand here and argue, fine, she said evenly. But by the time you get a tow truck, you'll be shopping for a new engine block. Her voice carried confidence, calm but cutting, and it rippled through the crowd. Someone snickered. A younger valet near the edge whispered, "She's got guts." Another guest murmured, "Cole doesn't know what hit him." The pressure mounted like heat on asphalt. Harrison clenched his jaw, then with a sharp movement, yanked the lever inside the cabin. The hood popped open with a metallic click. Gasps fluttered across the onlookers. A billionaire bowing to a stranger's demand. Naomi didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, her steel-toe boots clicking softly against the pavement, and lifted the hood with practiced ease. A wave of heat spilled out, thick and acrid, carrying the sharp scent of burning coolant mixed with high-performance oil. She inhaled, nostrils flaring, then leaned over the engine bay. Her hands moved instinctively, the way a pianist's hands find the keys without thought. Years in her father's shop, learning by watching before she was tall enough to reach the tools, had trained her eyes and ears. Later, when life forced her to take over the shop after his passing, she had honed that instinct into a skill so sharp that even seasoned mechanics called her uncanny. Naomi tapped a hose with her knuckles, watching the faint shimmer of condensation near the clamp. She squinted. Hum. Overheating. Air pocket in the coolant line, maybe a sticky thermostat. Harrison, standing stiffly beside her, tried to salvage control. That's speculation, he muttered. Naomi shot him a glance over her shoulder, unimpressed. No, that's diagnosis. Speculation is what you're doing, assuming money makes a car invincible. The crowd chuckled, louder this time. Harrison's ears burned. He wanted to snap back, but something in her tone, firm, grounded, stopped him. She continued, muttering under her breath like she always did when focused. Heat soak, yeah, fans running but not enough flow. Okay. She wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist, smearing a streak of grease across her temple. You got a flathead screwdriver? Harrison blinked. What? Flathead, she repeated. Or I can improvise. Improvise? On a Lamborghini. Naomi rolled her eyes. Relax. I'm not about to rip out the transmission. It's a coolant bleed. Quick fix. The valet boy Jordan, her younger brother, slipped forward nervously, holding out the hotel's multi-tool keychain. Naomi gave him a grateful nod before crouching lower. Her movements were swift, efficient. She loosened a clamp, adjusted a line, and the hiss softened. Sweat beaded at her hairline, sliding down her cheek, but her hands didn't waver. She tightened the clamp back into place, checked the thermostat housing, then tapped it lightly. All right, she said, straightening up and wiping her hands on her rag. Moment of truth. Start her up. Harrison hesitated. It wasn't that he doubted her, though he wanted to, but that starting the car meant acknowledging that she had taken control of his situation. His pride roared louder than the Lamborghini ever had. Naomi met his eyes. Go on, she said quietly, but there was steel in her tone. The silence pressed harder. Phones tilted up. Everyone was recording. Finally, with a clipped breath, Harrison slid into the driver's seat. His fingers hovered over the ignition button, then pressed. The Aventador roared to life, deep and smooth, the rattle gone. The hiss silenced. The engine purred with predatory grace, louder and cleaner than before. The crowd erupted. Whistles, applause, even a few shouts of, "She fixed it." A couple of people clapped Naomi on the back as if she were the star of a performance. Naomi didn't bask. She simply folded her rag, tucking it back into her pocket, and gave a satisfied nod. There. Easy fix if you know what you're doing. Harrison sat frozen in the driver's seat, his knuckles white against the leather steering wheel. His empire was still intact, his car alive again, but something deeper had cracked. For the first time in his career, he wasn't the one commanding respect. He was the one standing in silence while someone else owned the moment. Naomi turned to walk away, but paused, her gaze settling back on him. Next time, instead of yelling at people, maybe you should thank them. Respect goes a lot further than money. Her words weren't loud, but they carried. They echoed in the quiet that followed the applause, ringing louder than the Lamborghini's engine. Harrison's throat tightened. His instinct was to retort, to reclaim dominance, to sneer. But the words didn't come. He could only watch as Naomi handed the empty Tupperware to her brother and started toward the service entrance of the hotel, her head held high. Phones stayed raised, catching every second. Harrison knew this moment would follow him, viral, dissected, memed. He should have been furious. And he was. But beneath the fury, something else gnawed at him. Respect. Not demanded. Not bought. Earned. And Naomi Brooks had just earned more respect in 10 minutes than he had commanded in 10 years. If you were in Harrison's shoes, would you swallow your pride and thank Naomi publicly, or would you pretend it never happened to protect your ego? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you'd do. The next morning, Miami buzzed with something other than its usual beach traffic and cafe chatter. It buzzed with him. Harrison Cole, billionaire CEO of Cole Dynamics, had gone viral overnight. Billionaire yells at black woman, she fixes his Lamborghini, read one headline. Mechanic queen humiliates CEO in public, another blared. Clips of Naomi's calm defiance and the Lamborghini roaring back to life spread across social media like wildfire. TikTok remixes, Instagram reels, late-night memes, it was everywhere. Harrison sat at the head of his glass conference table, staring at the tablet screen with a clenched jaw. His board members shifted nervously around him. "This is bad optics," muttered one. "It makes you look arrogant and out of touch," said another. "And the woman, Naomi Brooks, she's become a symbol. People love her. They're calling her the Queen of the Hood Fix," a younger advisor added, almost amused. Harrison's jaw ticked. He hadn't built an empire just to be reduced to a punchline. But behind the humiliation, there was something else gnawing at him, her. The way she'd looked him dead in the eye and told him to pop the hood. The way she'd silenced his precious car with nothing but skill and confidence. The way her words, "Respect goes a lot further than money," echoed in his mind even now. He slammed the tablet shut. "Find her," he ordered curtly. Naomi, meanwhile, was back in her world. Her garage, Brooks Auto Repair, sat on a quieter stretch of Liberty City, Miami. The painted sign was faded, the bay doors rusted, but it was home. She worked 14-hour days to keep it running, taking every job she could, oil changes, brake fixes, even patching old AC units for neighbors. Jordan, 17, darted between school and helping her at the shop. He was bright, sharp with numbers, but she worried about him. The streets pulled at young men like him, and she was determined he wouldn't get lost. Money was tight. The bills piled up on the counter, the landlord's letters grew sharper in tone. Some nights Naomi lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, wondering how long she could hold everything together. But yesterday's incident, the billionaire, the car, the crowd, it played back in her mind. Not because of the attention, but because of the way he'd looked at her at the end. Like her words had pierced something deeper. She pushed it away. Men like him didn't change. Naomi. Jordan's voice jolted her. He rushed into the bay, waving his phone. "You're on TikTok. Like, everywhere. Look." Naomi groaned. "Jordan, I don't have time for." He shoved the screen in her face. Millions of views. Comments pouring in. She's a boss. Imagine being schooled by her in front of everyone. Respect to Naomi Brooks. Naomi's chest tightened. Great. Just what I need. Attention from strangers. Jordan grinned. "Sis, this could be good for business. Free advertising." But Naomi shook her head. She didn't trust sudden fame. Attention faded, bills didn't. Later that afternoon, the hum of a familiar engine pulled Naomi from under a Chevy she was repairing. At first, she thought she was imagining it, the deep guttural purr of an exotic machine. But when the matte black Lamborghini pulled up to her garage, her breath caught. Harrison Cole stepped out, tailored suit crisp despite the Miami humidity. He looked out of place against the cracked pavement and rusted garage doors, yet his presence filled the space like a storm cloud. Naomi's jaw tightened. "You've got to be kidding me." Harrison adjusted his cufflinks, ignoring the grease smudges on the ground as he approached. "We need to talk." She crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "The last time you opened your mouth, you yelled at me. Not interested in round two." His eyes flicked over her work shirt, her boots, the streak of oil on her cheek. She was unapologetically herself, and for reasons he couldn't explain, that unsettled him more than a hostile boardroom ever had. "I came to thank you," he said stiffly, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. Naomi raised a brow. "That sounded painful for you." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, but he shoved it down. "You saved me from a disaster yesterday. My car. My reputation." "Correction," Naomi cut in. "I saved your car. Your reputation? You wrecked that all by yourself." Jordan snickered from the side, earning a glare from Harrison. Naomi wiped her hands on a rag. "Why are you really here, Mr. Cole? Because I don't believe for 1 second you drove across Miami just to say thank you." Harrison hesitated. The truth was messy. Curiosity, pride, guilt, admiration, all tangled. "Because you interest me," he admitted finally, his voice lower. "You saw what no one else could. You didn't flinch when the world was watching. People don't do that with me." Naomi narrowed her eyes. And you think showing up here makes us, what? Equals. The silence crackled. For once, Harrison didn't have the upper hand. Naomi turned back to the Chevy, effectively dismissing him. Look, Mr. Cole. I don't need billionaires in my life. I've got enough problems trying to keep these lights on. He should have left. But instead, Harrison found himself lingering, drawn to the stubborn strength in her voice. And for the first time in years, he wondered what it might feel like to be the student, not the master. Do you think Naomi should give Harrison a chance to prove he's more than just an arrogant billionaire, or should she keep him at arm's length to protect herself? Let me know your thoughts in the comment. The days after Harrison's unexpected visit stretched taut with tension Naomi didn't want to name. She told herself she didn't care, that she had dismissed him and that was the end of it. Yet his words lingered, "You interest me." She didn't have time to entertain interest. The shop was drowning in bills. The bank's letters had grown bolder, final notice. Jordan's school had called about slipping grades. And her landlord, Mr. Klein, had dropped by just yesterday with a thin smile and a thick warning. "You're 3 months behind, Naomi," he'd said, tapping his gold watch impatiently. "One more week, and I'm leasing this place to someone who can actually pay." Naomi had nodded stiffly, refusing to show him how her stomach dropped. After he left, she'd sat on the floor of the office, head in her hands, whispering a prayer for strength. That morning, as she pushed up the garage door, she saw it, the Lamborghini again, purring at the curb like a predator waiting. Her chest tightened. Not again. The door swung open, and out stepped Harrison, dressed not in a suit this time but in rolled-up sleeves and dark jeans. The change was so jarring she almost didn't recognize him. Naomi narrowed her eyes. "You lost, Mr. Cole? Pretty sure the gala crowd is still over by oceanfront." He ignored the jab, walking into the garage as if he belonged. "I thought I'd see how a real mechanic works." She scoffed. "This isn't a field trip. You don't just stroll in here like it's a museum. I'm not here to gawk." His voice was calmer than she expected. "I'm here to learn." Naomi froze. For a moment, the clanging of wrenches and hum of engines seemed to quiet. "Learn," she repeated, incredulous. "Yes." He glanced at the Chevy on the lift. "You diagnosed my car in minutes. My mechanics couldn't. I've spent my life building machines, business machines. But I don't know the first thing about engines." His gaze met hers. "Teach me." Naomi blinked, then burst out laughing. The sound was sharp, echoing through the garage. "You? A billionaire CEO? Wanting to get your hands dirty? Please. You wouldn't last an hour. Try me." The silence stretched. Jordan popped his head out of the office, eyes wide. "Sis, if he wants to pay to learn, maybe." "I don't want his money," Naomi snapped, cutting him off. Harrison's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he surprised her by slipping off his watch, an elegant custom piece worth more than her shop, and setting it carefully on the counter. Then he rolled up his sleeves higher. "Where do we start?" Against her better judgment, Naomi put him to work. At first, she expected him to quit. She handed him the heaviest wrench, made him crawl under the dirtiest cars, had him scrape grime from an old muffler. Sweat plastered his hair to his forehead, grease smeared across his crisp shirt. But he didn't stop. Every time she barked an order, he obeyed without complaint. Every time she corrected his clumsy grip, he listened. And slowly, she saw something shift. The man who had once barked at her in a hotel parking lot was now silent under her direction, humbled by bolts that wouldn't budge and engines that refused to yield. At one point, as he struggled with a stubborn lug nut, she crouched beside him. Their hands brushed as she guided his grip. Heat flared up her arm, startling her. She pulled back quickly, masking it with sarcasm. "Not bad," she muttered. "For a rookie." Harrison gave a half-smile, the first real one she'd seen. High praise. Her stomach fluttered, and she hated that it did. The fragile rhythm shattered that evening when Mr. Klein returned. The landlord strode into the garage, slick suit gleaming, voice oily. "Naomi. Time's up. I warned you. Unless you have the money." His eyes landed on Harrison and widened. "Mr. Cole." Naomi stiffened. "He's just here." Klein's smile spread. Well, this changes things. A billionaire in your shop? Perfect. Why don't you let him cover the rent? One phone call, and your problems disappear. Naomi's chest burned with humiliation. She saw the trap. Klein wanted her pride crushed, wanted her begging. She turned to Harrison, voice hard. Don't you dare. But Harrison looked at her, then at Klein, and something in his eyes hardened. He stepped closer, not with a checkbook, but with words that cut like steel. Funny thing about money, Harrison said, his voice low. It doesn't buy integrity. Naomi doesn't owe you shame for being behind on rent. She owes you respect for running the only honest shop in this block, keeping people moving when others gouge them. Klein sputtered. That's not. Get out, Harrison said coldly. The landlord faltered under the weight of his gaze. For a man used to intimidating tenants, being dismissed so easily left him pale. With a final glare at Naomi, he retreated. The garage was quiet again. Naomi's throat tightened. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, Harrison interrupted. She blinked at him, struggling to reconcile this man with the one who had once humiliated her. Over the next week, Harrison kept showing up. Day after day, he returned, trading cufflinks for calluses. At first, Naomi tried to resist. She mocked him, kept him at arm's length, refused to let him near her heart. But he kept working. And with every shared laugh over a stubborn bolt, with every quiet conversation as the sun dipped low, the walls between them thinned. One night, as they closed the garage, Harrison paused. You know, you changed me. Naomi's chest tightened. Don't romanticize this. I'm not some project for you to feel good about. His eyes softened. You're not a project. You're the first person who's ever told me the truth to my face. And I needed that. Their gazes locked. The air between them thickened, charged with something neither wanted to name. Naomi turned away, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't make promises you can't keep, Harrison. But as she walked into the office, her heart betrayed her. For the first time in years, she felt seen. If you were Naomi, would you trust Harrison's change of heart, or keep your guard up, knowing how dangerous it can be to let someone with that much power close? Let me know your thoughts below. The week that followed was unlike anything Naomi had ever known. Every morning, Harrison's Lamborghini appeared outside her garage, not polished for show but streaked with the same grease stains that now patterned his shirts. He worked alongside her and Jordan, sanding brake pads, tightening bolts, even sweeping the floor when business slowed. At first, Naomi thought it was temporary, an ego trip, some kind of penance. But the days turned into nights, and the nights turned into quiet conversations over sandwiches at the workbench. Harrison didn't just show up, he stayed. And people noticed. Word spread that the billionaire CEO was slumming it in Liberty City, working at Brooks Auto. Some mocked him online, some applauded, but most didn't believe it was real until they saw it with their own eyes. A few customers even trickled in out of curiosity, phones out, capturing him wiping grease off his forehead like any other mechanic. For Naomi, it was surreal. Watching him fumble with a wrench, listening to him admit when he didn't know something, seeing him laugh when Jordan teased him, it chipped away at the fortress she'd built around her heart. But she didn't let herself forget. Her shop was still weeks away from being shut down. Bills didn't vanish because a billionaire decided to play mechanic. One Friday evening, as the sunset painted the sky gold and crimson, Naomi found Jordan waiting outside the office, his face pale. "What's wrong?" she asked. Jordan held up a letter. "Final eviction notice. If we don't pay by Monday, Klein takes the garage." Naomi's chest squeezed. She tried to smile for her brother's sake, but her hands trembled as she took the paper. "Go inside, Jay. I'll handle it." When he disappeared, she leaned against the doorframe, staring at the words that threatened to erase everything she'd fought for. "You should let me fix this," came a voice behind her. She turned sharply. Harrison stood a few feet away, his eyes steady, but his tone softer than usual. Naomi's throat tightened. "If you think I'm going to let you write a check and make this your charity case." "I wasn't offering money," Harrison interrupted. Her brow furrowed. "Then what?" His jaw clenched. "A choice. I have a property, a warehouse I bought years ago near the port. I was going to flip it into a tech hub, but it's just sitting there. If you lose this garage, you can have it. Lease-free. No contracts, no ownership games. Just space to work. Naomi blinked. Why? Because I don't want you to lose what makes you you. His voice cracked, raw and unguarded. Because in the short time I've known you, you've shown me more honesty, more strength, than anyone I've trusted in years. And because, he paused, the words heavy. Because I don't want to stop seeing you. The world tilted. Naomi's heart thundered, her instinct screaming to shut him out, to protect herself. But the sincerity in his eyes held her still. She exhaled slowly. You're dangerous, Harrison. Not because of your money. Because I don't know if I can trust you with me. He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that the warmth of him reached her. Then let me earn it. Saturday brought chaos. Mr. Klein arrived with a crew of movers, smirking as he waved the eviction papers. Time's up, Brooks. Naomi stood firm at the bay doors, Jordan by her side, fear etched across his face. Customers gathered nearby, whispering. Then Harrison appeared, not in a suit, not in a car, but in a work shirt streaked with grease. He strode up to Klein, voice cold. You're evicting her illegally. The state gives 30 days after a final notice. You filed early. Klein sputtered. That's... I've already called the housing authority, Harrison cut in, holding up his phone. You'll be fined for harassment. And if you think you can intimidate her again, you'll answer to me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Klein blanched, sputtered curses, then stormed off with his crew. Naomi's knees nearly buckled. Harrison caught her arm, steadying her. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Yes, I did, he said softly. Not with money. With my voice. My power. Yours, if you'll let me share it. That night, after Jordan went home, Naomi found herself alone with Harrison in the quiet garage. The air between them hummed, charged with something that had been building since that first confrontation in the parking lot. You changed my life, he said finally. The man you met at the gala, he's not who I want to be anymore. You made me see that respect is worth more than fear. Naomi's eyes burned. She wanted to fight it, to keep her guard up, but the walls crumbled. And you reminded me I don't have to carry everything alone. The silence stretched, thick and tender. Slowly, Harrison reached for her hand. She let him. And in that moment, beneath the dim lights of the garage, their worlds collided. Not billionaire and mechanic, not ego and survival, but two people who had finally learned how to see each other. Weeks later, Brooks Auto was busier than ever. Customers poured in, curious about the woman who'd humbled a billionaire. Business soared. Jordan's grades improved with Harrison quietly funding tutoring sessions, not with Naomi's knowledge, but through Jordan's request. One evening, Naomi stepped outside to lock up and found Harrison waiting, leaning against the Lamborghini. You're still here, she murmured. I told you, he said, his smile soft. I'm not going anywhere. And for the first time in years, Naomi believed it. If you were Naomi, would you finally let down your guard and believe Harrison has truly changed? Or would you keep a part of your heart protected, just in case? Comment your thoughts. I'd love to hear them.